Thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this discussion and put forward my views. Sir, as many of my senior colleagues in this House have said, and I join them in reiterating, the problem of floods in our country occurs almost every year and disrupts millions of lives and causes havoc and untold misery to those millions. Almost every year, almost as routine, we stand up and discuss the floods, and the government responds with aid, grants, and relief. Little aid actually ever reaches the people affected by the floods, and in many cases, despite the government aid and support, lives are irreparably damaged and destroyed. Sir, I'll make my discussion in two parts. Firstly, I would like to summarize the impact of the floods and rains this year on my state, Karnataka, and plead with the central government for financial support. So my state has recorded very high rainfall this year between June and August. The rainfall over the state between June and August has been the highest since 1970. And many districts, including Koppal, Raichur, Bellary, Chitradurga, Belgaum, Bidar, Bagalkot, Bijapur, Hassan, have recorded significantly high rainfall, with many of these districts recording rain highest ever in the last 100 years. So this has resulted in large inflows into our major reservoirs, and the huge release from these reservoirs have led to flooding, inundation, and extensive damage to life, property, infrastructure, agriculture, and crops. So 43 lives have been lost and damage to over 180,000 hectares of standing agricultural crops and 21,000 hectares of horticultural crops, with total financial damages estimated to be over 1,600 crores, has been the cost of the floods to our state. Our state has already submitted a first flood memorandum of rupees 400 plus crores to the government, and the central study team has visited the state and submitted its report to the government. However, the central government has not released any fund under the NCCF and has only released 23.7 crores under the CRF. I would urge through you, sir, the government of India release funds to my state as expeditiously as possible. Sir, coming to the second part of what I wish to say, as many members in the House have said, we visit and revisit the floods every year, and given our country's geography, its many rivers and basins, and the increasing impact of global warming, floods will naturally occur every year. I also agree with many members, and I reiterate that despite this almost annual event, we do not seem to have any long-term plan to address the problem of floods. I believe it would be very appropriate on the 60th year of our independence if we develop a longer-term and sustainable strategy to address this debilitating tragedy that visits our country every year. We owe it to our future generation that we leave behind some plan to address this annual problem. So there are many variables at play here that create this recurrent and annual recurrence of floods: excessive rains, excessive and indiscriminate damming of rivers, encroachment of riverbanks and basins, erosion of riverbanks, and increasingly evident phenomenon of global warming. So there cannot be any simple or short-term solution to this. Sir, I'd like to make through you some suggestions to the government on what they can do to evolve a long-term plan. Firstly, sir, the process of granting financial relief from the center to the state should be completely restructured, with the objective of ensuring speedier and more transparent financial resources to the affected state and the people, and removing or at least reducing the corruption and political partisanship from the process of allocating funds. One suggestion could be that, sir, the government structures its various funds into one central government guaranteed line of credit available to the state to be drawn down during calamities, against very transparent and safeguards against misuse of this line of credit, because as we all know, there is considerable misuse of calamity funds. Secondly, sir, and a few members have touched on this, we must improve the process of forecasting of floods. Better forecasting can and should save lives, which today seem to be the collateral damage of our lack of will to develop a new approach to handling floods. Our Met department must be given more resources, and their forecasting technologies and equipment must be upgraded. In addition, either the Met department or an appropriate agency of the government like the IRSA should look at using technology to remote sense and survey all our rivers, the basins, and especially the flood-prone regions, creating a modern and high-technology database that can be the basis of planning and forecasting floods in the future.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, how much time we are going to take?
Sir, 1 moment, 2 more minutes.
Oh. This is your maiden speech, therefore I don't want to interrupt.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
But please conclude.
Thirdly, sir, the issue of interlinking of rivers must be looked at. The previous NDA government had planned an ambitious interlinking of rivers and basins project. There are no signs of this project anymore. It is not clear if the current government has shelved this project or modified it or is just ignoring it. Either way, I believe, sir, it deserves a relook and some form of interlinking, even if it is in a smaller, more targeted way at certain geographies, will serve to rebalance peaking water surges during flood season. I would urge the government through you, sir, to attempt to create a consensus around this issue of interlinking of rivers. Sir, fourthly, the state must focus on the issues of riverbank encroachment, silting, and erosion, all of which have significantly contributors to floods. This is squarely in the territory of the state's responsibility, and the government of India must develop a plan to work with the states to encourage and incentivize state governments and panchayats in this connection of both funding and enforcement. So finally, it's clear that our decades of abuse of environment and the ongoing abuse of the environment is causing the global warming effect. The government and specifically the Environment Ministry must get on top of this issue and give the nation a State of the Nation report at the earliest that can be basis of the country to start sensitizing itself to the impact of the abuse of the environment on floods and other natural calamities. I would, sir, urge a separate debate and discussion on this issue. To end, sir, I reiterate, while the government must ensure maximum efforts to speed up relief and aids to the millions of displaced and flood-affected people, the government must also immediately take the initiative to start the process of protecting our people from the annual occurrence of floods through a long-term and sustainable strategy. I urge, through you, sir, all political parties and members who otherwise stand for the oppressed and downtrodden to persuade the government to launch this permanent long-term strategy to the whole issue of water and in particular flood prevention and protection of people from floods. And I hope the government will take the necessary steps. Thank you.